Glittering
And welcome to the Cinema 9 podcast. I am one of your hosts, Travis Roy. I'm joined with Eric Branstrom. Our regular co-host, Mike Govier, couldn't make it today, so we're just doing a twosome. Eric, buddy, how are you today?
Dude, I'm good. It is a beautiful Saturday morning. Today, all I got to do is pack up my car because I'm going on a beautiful trip to Nashville, Tennessee for the next few days. I rented a house and I'm going to fucking take it easy. There's a hot tub there that is purportedly cleaned by the Yelp reviewers. And I'm excited to lay low and do my thing.
Yeah, think not about bacteria while you're in there.
Yeah.
But, dude, Nashville, have you been to Nashville before?
I drove past it and I really wanted to check it out, but I just did not have the time.
You're going to have a blast, man. It is. I mean, I've been there quite a few times and I love it every single time. Very memorable nights. That strip, just music coming out of every fucking bar and just great beer. And
well, I got my daughter. Atmosphere. Is it like toddler friendly? Yeah, this could change things.
Well, yeah. I mean, you might want to head more towards the Smokies and all that, like where all the Dolly Parton stuff is. Like, I feel like you're going towards more of like the. I thought, well, I mean, I'm sure that there's plenty to do there for kids. And at night, you can bring your child to the bars to check out the many bands. Yeah, and of course, just getting away from the house for a little bit is always nice. That's good. I'm not going anywhere myself, although I am on a sort of vacation from school, from teaching. But I'm like still going to work and going into my office, which is a lot of fun to do, to have a vacation that's not a vacation.
Yeah,
my favorite. You know, we're doing Legend today from 1985. We should say hello and send out goodwill and love to our friend Jason Welichko, who is going to be our guest host to step in today, but for reasons that are his own, that he was unable to make it despite many valiant efforts. So shout out to you, our friend. We wish you good luck and much love.
Dude, you're in our thoughts, and we hope we can bring some justice to this pick that you were extremely excited about. So, apologize in advance for all the bubble jokes, but, we got to be honest.
There's a lot of bubbles in this movie.
Bubbles. What's the glitter budget on this film?
lot of bubbles. But of course, before we do that, we got to get through our what we usually do. Mike gave me a hard time last time I was stepping in for him. I don't pay attention to the order in which we do things. Do we
Tids and bits and then guinea pigs?
Okay, that's what I thought. Tids and bits, as we like to reference the classic film The Other Sister. My tidbit in news is probably the same thing you chose, Mike. It's the Hollywood has been all aflutter lately because the exit of a producer over at Marvel Studios by the name of Victoria Alonso. There's been all this speculation about, was she fired? Did she quit? If she was fired, what did she get fired for? And so the past week or so here in and what is today, the 20th, late March of 2023, there's been a lot of speculation about her. Because she's an openly gay Argentinian immigrant, and so some people think that since she's pushed for representation, some people think that she's being pushed out because she's too pushy in that regard. But it seems to me that since she was in charge for a long time of visual effects, and that has been the main complaint coming out of both filmmakers, like the visual effects artists themselves, and the audience. This has been the steady complaint for the last 2 or 3 years. It seems to me not a huge surprise that she was forced out. What do you think of all this?
I've been following this story. I've been hearing that primarily Bob Iger is not very impressed with the numbers, and then plain and simple for Disney in general. And he's got to make a shitload of cutbacks and some big changes to try to get things moving in a direction. And after Quantumania pulls in, $500 million and underperforms, he's not going to let Feige go. So he's looking at his second in command and just chopping heads off over there.
I'd like to back up. You said $500 million underperforms, right?
Yeah. Well,
that's the world we live in now. That's
the world we live in. Yeah.
That's a failure of a film.
That's a failure.
It only made $500 million.
Yeah.
Jesus fuck. It's we're definitely seeing a slowdown in the Marvel production, which I think is for the better. Despite being a big fan, obviously, I think it's going to improve the lives of the people that make it, and it's going to improve the output that they're producing. So to me, I kind of take some. I mean, I think that this is probably a good thing since it seems to be that has been the weak link in Marvel. And Alonso, she was behind the really excellent film that won the Golden Globe for Best International Film, Argentina 1985. Right. So, and she's obviously well decorated in her field. So I don't think that her career is going to be ruined or anything. And of course, we will be seeing her name on lots of Marvel credits for the next several films since she helped get them off the ground.
She'll be fine. You know, it was interesting to see reports saying that all TV projects are essentially on hold when usually they have these down to the fucking day and date and everybody's excited. And now they're just kind of pushing pause. I think Loki season 2 is the only one that's like confirmed to be already filming and moving forward. Everything else is like, well, let's just kind of see what happens here.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a dramatic slowdown. And I imagine that some of these shows with less premier characters like the Agatha Harkness show and the Echo show, if these shows had not already gotten going, like I think that they've already been filmed, I'm pretty sure. I imagine that this is the kind of thing they would have just stopped, or that Iger would have stopped. So we'll see what's going on with all this. So did I steal your tidbit? Was this the tidbit you were going to go with?
It's Iger related. I mean,
okay.
Disney's it's up in arms, man. I mean, like their expectations are insane. I think in 2022 they projected I think maybe 8 or 9 films that made $1 billion, which is fucking outrageous.
Yeah. And
since they're only at maybe 1 or 2 this year, they're going to the drawing board and stockholders are fucking going nuts. So I'm interested to see what he does with Star Wars. That's kind of my main tidbit because this is a fucking disaster. Like these writer and directors are jumping ship. I mean, it's been this way since right after Force Awakens when these anthology directors just fucking gave up and nobody really knows who to point the finger at. It's very easy to point it at Kathleen Kennedy because she's like been this scapegoat that we know about, but we don't really know what's going on behind the scenes. But nevertheless, every single project that they announce ends up falling apart. They just lost Damon Lindelof, who gave us some hope for the next movie. They lost fucking Patty Jenkins. Taika Waititi, who was set to star and make his own movie, jumped ship. He just said he'd rather watch them instead of be in them, and he couldn't take on this whole big process. And now they got and they fucking announced this guy from Peaky Blinders to make the next one. And then the same day I get a report that he's about to make remake Vertigo with Bob Downey Jr. What? So that's probably going to take over his schedule and he's going to bow out of this newly announced Star Wars movie too. It's a fucking train wreck. I mean, how do you have this property and we haven't seen a movie in theaters since Solo, which was what, 2018? Or no, Rise of Skywalker was 2019, and that's the last one in theaters, and we're not expected to see one in 2023. That's a fucking disaster. And if you're gonna trim the fat, somebody's got to go who's making these choices, because this is a $4 billion purchase from George Lucas. They should be banging these out 2 at a time. And good quality films should be banged out 2 at a time, and we haven't seen anything in 4 years. Are you fucking kidding me?
Well, obviously they're doing well on television, or pretty well. I mean, not everything's great, that's for sure. I would say they're about.
The Mandalorian numbers are the lowest they've ever been. Like people are tuning even out of Mandalorian season 3. Like I don't know what the hell's going on.
Yeah, well, I think that there's a couple things going on, and this is my speculation and opinion. But I think for one, I think that people are getting a little bit worn out on superhero and fantasy and sci-fi. I think that these are all my bread and butter. I'm not sick of this shit at all. But I think that they have enjoyed for the last 10 years or so the limelight so much that people are starting to get a little tired of it. And it's an embarrassment of riches with this stuff. I mean, we're getting tons of content in terms, not just Marvel, but superhero stuff in general. And then with Star Wars, despite there not being anything in film, there's been a lot on TV and of, mixed and all these things pretty mixed and getting some good stuff and some not so good stuff. And from a creator's perspective, I'm seeing a lot of complaints. Like, for instance, I can't think of the guy's name, the guy that just directed both Shazam movies, which I love. I love the first one. I haven't seen the second one because it's still in theaters and it's getting bashed. But like, he's left and said that he's not going to be doing stuff like this anymore. Mostly, it sounds like because he's sick of the fandom, and I imagine that's got a lot to do with a lot of these people. Like, you want to like step into the shoes of Lucas, and then you got to also like get like the full gale winds of all these opinions, and you're not going to make anyone happy. I think that like the fandoms are so fervent that they're literally driving away talent from producing some of this stuff, because I think that people not just the fandom, but the media as well. Like, I think it just becomes, I think a lot of these people are probably dropping out because it's daunting to take on such a project that has that many eyes on it and that level of vitriol if you don't nail it from the perspective of every individual.
I think those are some really good points. A product like this is it's like committee based 100%. Yeah. So a lot of these writers and directors probably have something excellent they could bring to the table, but they're worried about this committee that's probably just going to tear it to shreds and mandate all of this stuff. I mean, that's not to say that you can't have product like that Jon Favreau puts out that's fantastic when it comes to those first couple seasons of The Mandalorian. Like, I think if you have something that is going to be good, you should try to make it. But if you are worried that you're going to get fucked over by anybody in charge, yeah, it's probably best to step back. I mean, Rian Johnson steps back. He had a planned trilogy and he's out. David Benioff and Weiss, they're out. And these are fantastic filmmakers that, I don't know, it's just kind of interested to see it. But yeah, I mean, everything's fucked. And you say sci-fi and superheroes are getting tired. I don't know, because look at the charts. John Wick 4 is blowing up. Last of Us is blowing up. So these genre type things, there's an appetite still, but the product has to be good, or else people will get up in arms.
Yeah, and John Wick, I would say that's more just like straightforward action. I don't know that's necessary. It's not science fiction or anything like that. I don't know if it's a genre film, but I would agree that Last of Us has blown up. And I think that's in part because of the dramatic elements, not so much the horror elements. I think that people might start pushing more towards, I think there's plenty of authenticity to be found in all of these genres, but stuff that is more grounded in the real world. I can, we'll see. We'll see if that's where people are going.
I guess we'll see.
So I've been watching some stuff, but really not that much. I had a pretty busy week. I checked out the Boston Strangler, this new film that's on Hulu. And I just love what's her? I'm totally blanking on her name. Keira Knightley. Yeah, Keira Knightley. She's been starring in stuff for the last few years, but it's all been stuff that I just haven't been interested in. So I haven't seen her in a leading role in a while, and it was nice to see her in this. And I was not aware of how convoluted the case of the Boston Strangler really is. I think the filmmakers did a good job of not trying to bend the movie to follow like something very accessible and easy to understand, because the case is not. So I thought they did a pretty good job there. Not great, but certainly worth checking out.
Did you ever see the Tony Curtis film where he played the killer?
No, but that is referenced in the movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because the movie takes place from like the beginning of the killings to more or less like the mid 70s. And that was produced in 1968, I believe. So there's actually like a reference to that in the movie, which is funny.
Wow, cool.
Yeah, it was pretty good. I checked out Au revoir les enfants, or Les Enfants. I cannot speak French. Goodbye Children from Louis Malle in 1987. This movie is very highly regarded. It's one of those movies that often shows up on critics' best lists and stuff, and it's just heartbreaking. It was so good. This autobiographical story of it's Louis Malle's life, and he's not, the kid is not, the character doesn't have his name, but we know, that it's him, and it's he plays a young kid in a French boarding school in like Vichy, France during the war, and there's a Jewish kid in hiding with him that he kind of like has a rivalry and friendship with. It is really a slow burn that just left me in tears. It was great. It was
Okay.
really, really good. But don't worry, I'm not too much of a film snob watching my French movies, because I followed that up with Tremors 3: Back to Perfection,
Okay.
starring Michael Gross.
Sure.
Which, since he's the only person left in this franchise by this point, like they had to adopt his character's like perspective, so it's all very like right wing and like anti-government. It's kind of hilarious. And that checked out a couple of big, long, lengthy film or music documentaries. One being Gone with the Wind, the something rise, dramatic fall of Leonard Skinner, which was about 3 hours long and good. Mostly I learned from it that like it would have sucked to be in Leonard Skinner. Like they did, it was like the hardest working band, but like not in a fun or good way. Like there's literally people in the band like having mental breakdowns from the amount of like the precision demanded from Ronnie Van Zant, and then like the touring schedules and stuff by the record companies and the managers and stuff. It was just it was like a shit show. I mean, like you think the plane was a bad situation and preventable. The whole fucking situation sounded pretty bad for those guys. But I actually followed that up. I mean, I actually watched that as a follow-up because I wanted to see what else Tubi had to offer, because this was on Tubi.
Of course.
On Tubi, I stumbled across Running Down a Dream, which was Peter Bogdanovich's 4-hour documentary about the life of not Tom Petty, but the existence of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Very much a focus on that entire band. It is incredible.
Never even heard of it.
Yeah, I hadn't either, dude. It came out in 2007. It completely passed by me. And it's fantastic. I mean, it's like the polar opposite of Leonard Skinner's experience, despite coming from the same region of the same state around the same time. Like these guys are a brotherhood. If any one of them had left the band or died, the band probably would have broken up, except for that both those things did happen. So the movie details how they dealt with that. It deals with like breakups and drug use, and I mean, like it is awesome, dude. But it's really inspiring how like these dudes could create this thing that they love together, and despite all the ups and downs that come with creating a piece of art together, and the commitments that can be very frustrating, how they kept it together for years through the ups and downs. It's really, I mean, I just loved it. I couldn't recommend it more. Not even just if you're a Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers fan, just like if you've ever been in a band or if you like music, Running Down a Dream is an incredible documentary.
4 hours.
It blew by.
4 hours.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that the Skinner doc? Is that the one I watched on Netflix that came out last year?
No, there's 2 of them. This was 2015.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Mostly interviews with like the same 3 or 4 dudes, like Bob Burns, which was interesting. But yeah, it was like Bogdanovich taking on documentary. Like it's huge in scope, not just in length with Running Down a Dream, but like it's expertly crafted. Whereas the Skinner documentary was like, okay, here's a guy in a chair, here's another guy in a chair, here's the first guy in a chair again.
Dang. Okay. Well, solid run of entertainment there. Yeah, I watched Remember the Titans on Disney Plus. I saw Denzel's face and I hit play immediately. I haven't seen this since the theaters in 2000, and I'm sitting there watching it. I'm like, fucking Christ, this is 23 years old. It's really cheesy. I mean, it's really cheesy. They're really like hammering down on like the us versus them stuff about like the black players and the white players in like some cringeworthy ways, where like, of course they get together over like the Temptations, and it's all very like extremely saccharine, and it's like bookended with like a narrative from, of all people, like Little White Girl that knew like one of the players or something. It's really just like vanilla like year 2000 movie where they're trying to be like kumbaya about everything. Just cheesy, but it's on Disney Plus, so that's a good family film if you turn your brain off and try to enjoy yourself. Yeah, I watched the Whitney Houston biopic, I Want to Dance with Somebody. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't go out of my way to see this film because it's like a Lifetime movie. This is your typical Wikipedia. This happened, then this happened, then this happened. Then we're in the studio, and then Bobby Brown's here. So yeah, be careful. But it does feature a fantastic performance, not by the lead, but by Stanley Tucci, the Tooch, as Clive Davis. He's fantastic. He's fucking fantastic as Clive Davis. Worth the viewing alone. But the movie is very like paint by number, typical stuff, man. And there was a lot to work with there. Somebody did a documentary, I think it was called Whitney, a couple years ago on Prime. It was fantastic. And if you know anything about the story of Whitney Houston, they really should have centered this movie about a secondary character that she kind of grew up with and somebody that worked with Whitney Houston to make this narrative way more interesting. I love biopics that are told from like the friend's point of view or like somebody else. So like the central figure becomes like this shadowy, untouchable persona, so you can keep that mystique. But this one kind of blew it, man, aside from the Tooch.
Well, when in doubt, the Tooch will prevail.
Yeah, of course. And then I turned on, despite me cracking jokes and scoffing at the trailer since I first saw it, checked out A Man Called Otto, starring Tom Hanks and directed by Mark Forster. I hit play, man. And I got to tell you, I dug the film. I liked the film. I cried several times, and it got me. It got me, and it absolutely was trying to get me because it's very sappy and melodramatic, and like it's just made for like that white after church crowd that's gonna pour out of the theater in tears. That's who it's made for, and it delivers on that because there's some powerful stuff in there, but it's still like your typical like he's a grouch, but you know he's gonna be cute and cuddly at the end, and he is, and like stuff happens that changes him. But you know, it was pretty good. Mark Forster's hit or miss with me. Like he'll give you something like Monsters Ball, which is very raw and has a lot of fresh energy, and then he'll give you Finding Neverland, which is fluff trash. And this is more towards the latter. But still, if you're looking for something to do on a rainy day, he could do much worse.
All right,
that's about it for me.
Okay, so we watched some movies, not too many movies.
Yeah, it's true.
In that case, that means that it's time for us to get on with the our filthy business, as Dana Gould would say.
True.
It's time to talk 1985's Legend, the Ridley Scott film Legend. And again, shout out to Jason Welichko for picking this one. I don't think I would have ever picked it. Would you have picked it?
No.
I would not have either, for reasons I'll get into here in a moment. But we typically start looking at we do the IMDb scores first. Walk me through this thing we've been doing for 3 years.
Every episode is exactly the same. I'll tell you what we do. We look at the IMDb score, then we'll take a look at the critics' reviews, and then talk about our experiences with the film. I have no idea what the score is on this. I haven't heard anybody talk about it in 30 years. Like once in a while you see a picture of darkness pop up on some makeup site, but I haven't heard word one in 30 years. I'm going to say 6.5.
Yeah, I feel like this isn't one you hear people talk about a lot. Usually like you start talking about Labyrinth or something like that, and then someone else will pipe up with Legend. So yeah, I don't think it's that. I'm going to say 6.6. Why not? Survey says 6.3.
Okay. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Out of 68,000 reviews. So that's well reviewed. It's pretty high up in the popularity on IMDb. It's at 635, which is in the top. I think being the top 1,000 really is pretty good.
Okay.
In my opinion. There's a lot of movies on IMDb. So people are still watching it for sure. Let's see what the critics have to say over at Rotten Tomatoes. We're looking at 41% on the tomato that thing.
Yeah, that thing.
73% on the audience scores. We got some popcorn upright. People like it. Critics, not as much.
Yeah, a lot of splats from what I see here, man.
Yeah. We'll start with a positive. Kevin Carr, Fat Guys at the Movies. Why they haven't invited me. This is a fantasy painting come to life as a movie. If you know anything about fantasy paintings, you'll also know that most fantasy paintings don't have a story or plot to them. That's a fully ripe tomato.
Wow.
That doesn't sound complimentary, does it?
No, and I am seeing a lot of fingers being point at the script here, man. The Variety staff says that Legend's a fairy tale produced on a grand scale. At the same time, the premise is alarmingly thin and a compendium of any number of ancient fairy tales. Splat.
I don't know about you, but I'm seeing like no reviews from the time it came out. Are you seeing any of that?
Roger Ebert said in his January 1st, 2000 review, like many recent sword and sorcery movies. So this is probably a reposting of his original view if he's talking about recent movies. It's so effective in rendering evil, so good at depicting the dire, bleak fates facing the heroes, that it's too dreary and gloomy for its own good. He and Gene splatted this one.
Okay. Vincent Canby over at the New York Times. It says succinctly, Ridley Scott has done better. So,
dang.
All right. Not a lot of positive reviews. Again, a lot of the fans seem to like it. Critics, not as much. Now, do you remember the first time you saw this movie?
I remember it being around when I was a kid, and I remember being hyper aware of obviously the darkness character. I remember just like sitting around in my room, just drawing him over and over and over and over again. I was just obsessed with the look of this creature.
Yeah.
But when it came to the movie, like I remember watching it and like, how do I explain this? I just remember feeling very uncomfortable while watching it all the time. And, it made sense to me when I watched it a couple of days ago. Why? But yeah, I watched it a couple of times, but I was very influenced by the look of the film as a kid. But I haven't seen it since. I think I watched it maybe last year, and I told you guys that I kind of turned it off. I was like, whatever, who cares? But yeah.
I have a very distinct memory of the first time I saw this movie. Yeah, because I got about 5 minutes into it. I was about 5 years old, maybe 4 years old, 6 years. I was about in that range when it first came out, and my family rented it. And I made a note in watching the movie. I made it as far as the winged man chopping up the human being in front of the fireplace before
PG.
Satan in this PG rated movie. I made it that far. As soon as Satan, he's not darkness, it's fucking Satan. As soon as fucking Lucifer started talking and I'm watching this human being get chopped up, I freaked the fuck out. I ruined movie night for my whole family. And I'm like, no, I can't watch this. And I pissed my brother off big time and probably my sister too. Cause I was like, no, I'm not watching this. And I made them return it and go, and they went and my brother and sister were pissed. My mom took the movie, went back down the street to Movie Land and said, my son is freaking out. Please give us Transylvania 65000. It's the only movie that will calm him down. So she brought that home and I watched that again.
There's a famous story of you being absolutely either or perhaps both horrified and enamored by the Thriller video.
It's famous. Famous story.
Yeah. Is this kind of like the same thing where like some things freaked you out, but other things like fascinated you and excited you in terms of this stuff when you were a kid?
So I mean, I was very much into that kind of stuff done right, because Monster Squad, I was a huge fan of when that came out, and like you said, Thriller, I became obsessed with werewolves after that movie, and like zombies to a degree. Well, I was terrified of the zombies. I couldn't hardly handle them, but yeah, I think it would be like a mix of being fascinated or not. But I think with this one, it probably was because I was I was raised in a fairly religious household, especially over at my dad's house. So I feel like the whole Satan thing was what really threw me. I'm not used, I was not used to seeing depictions of the devil that in real life. I'd seen Fantasia, for instance, but like this was, I mean, what Tim Curry and Rob Bottin did in this movie is something else entirely. It's like this otherworldly character that it's a big deal, I think, in film, and it makes sense that it would make me want to shit my pants as a 5-year-old.
It's a couple of times when I watched this a few days ago, I'm looking at this and I'm rubbing my eyes, thinking to myself, how did they do that? Like in 1985, there's no edges. There's nothing that looks like phone to me anyway. Like there's this like grease and this grime on darkness. It looks fucking real. It looks so fucking good. But yeah, I mean, I think over the years, Ridley Scott has shied away from the film a little bit. He tried to save face by putting out a fucking long ass director's cut, but Tom Cruise has divorced himself from the film, and it comes out in this weird time where you have so much. Look at Ebert's review, man. You could go down the list with with dark sci-fi, fantasy, Excalibur, Lady Hawk, Dark Crystal. All of these dreary, depressing fantasy films come out, and then this one lays on you, where literally people are getting chopped up for food. It's a kids movie. I see where these critics are coming from in '85.
This is the same year as Black Cauldron too, which I love.
Cauldron.
But you're right. Like, I think you hit it on the head. This is definitely a time of really grim fairy tales, kind of ostensibly for children. The 80s in general were about that. Like, how badly can we terrify the kids? So here we are. But so I didn't watch it again until since we started the podcast. I watched it maybe 2 years ago or something, and I would have talked about it then. And then I watched it a couple nights ago for Jason Welichko. We love you, Jason.
Yeah.
So where to begin?
It's our second foray into Ridley Scott's world. We did American Gangster, which I'm pretty sure we liked. And in '85, Ridley Scott is coming off Alien and Blade Runner. So all eyes are on this guy. And he gives us this. I mean, the biggest surprise for the big surprise for me when I turned the film on was that it's like 89 minutes, at least the version I saw.
Yeah.
I seen it as a kid. Didn't this always seem like it was like this fucking gigantic epic? And yet it's so short.
The 5 minutes that I watched seemed pretty intense. But I cannot tell you if it seemed epic to me as a kid, because again, I did not see it until my 40s. But I was grateful to not watch the director's cut. It seems like, seems like that would have been overly long. This is not a very complicated story in any way, shape, or form. This is to me, this movie, Ridley Scott's British, so he takes British Isles like fantasies, films, and gives us a presentation of here's how, here's that moment of the divorcement between humanity and these legendary creatures, and here's how they became separated on two sides of this divide from one another, never to meet again, and that's where the legends are born. So it's a cool framing of this, the way that he's going about it, because he's able to borrow heavily from stuff that he is well familiar with and that a lot of his audience is well familiar with. But that said, a little chintzy, a little cheap on the plot. Not a lot of depth there.
It's so true. In fact, my biggest issue with the film is the fact that it's like a 10-year-old was writing like his assignment was write a fable. And he's like, all right, I'm gonna have to get the princess. We need the woods boy. We need demon and goblins, and there you go. And turns it in. It baffles my mind that Ridley Scott, who especially back then was this meticulous filmmaker, and he is when it comes to the visuals on this. Yeah, he accepts this script from this random dude who wrote fantasy novels. There's nothing here. And I'm watching this movie. Yeah, he teamed up with some Swedish guy or something to write it. He hired somebody. He knew what he wanted, and he's like, write this. And the guy's like, all right, I'll write it. I'm watching it. I'm just kind of wishing that he would have remade Snow White or would have remade Beauty and the Beast. All these movies that he's homaging, especially Cocteau's films. I just wish he would have went with one of those classic stories and along with his insanely creative, unique vision, because the story is nothing. The whole time I'm scribbling notes are you fucking kidding me? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?
Maybe I assume that Scott wrote it or something. Yeah, William Hortzberg is the writer, and it seems like a lot of the a lot's being put on the production designer, Asheton. I hope it's Asheton. It's spelled S-Heton. Asheton Gorton, who I'm not familiar with, but clearly he is doing a lot of the heavy lifting in this movie, because I see, as I'm watching this movie, I'm going to have some gripes. And as I'm watching this movie, I don't see people prancing around in a magical forest. I see actors prancing around on a set. And this is all shot on a set. And it all feels like a set. So to me, a lot of it seems like kind of what you were getting at. Like the story was put on the back burner, and the assumption was, hey, this is kind of for kids, and also it's like a basic fairy tale. It doesn't need to be complicated. Let's focus on the visuals of this thing, and the visuals are strong. I mean, more than strong. I mean, they're really, really good. Botine's work, not just on the character of Darkness, which where is Tim Curry? I can't see him in that. Like, I just see the character of Darkness, but also, that's Robert Picardo is Meg Mucklebones.
It is
there. He gets beheaded. That swamp creature. That's fucking Robert Picardo in there, which he's probably buddies with Rob Bottin after Wolf and.
Well, I think he did Explorers that same year, and I think Bottin did the work for Picardo on that. Yeah,
they must have become pretty good buddies, which makes sense. They're sitting in chairs together, for long periods of time. And not just the costume work. I mean, while it's all very clearly a set, the set looks gorgeous. It's shot well. Visually, a stunning movie, right? I mean, that's hard to argue.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a set. Like something about like the look of it is super like cozy to me. Like even kind of knowing it's a set, it gives me like these like silent film vibes where like clearly like the Universal backlot and all the Universal monsters, like it's clearly a set, but it's like got like this storybook, like, hey, come join us for story time kind of thing, where it doesn't have to look real. In fact, if it took place in a real location, I might just be, oh, Ireland. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like at the same time, what the fuck is all this shit flying around? Like, I don't know if you watch this in HD, but like, is the set infested with like fucking bubbles? like
bubbles.
Bugs and bubbles? Like, we need some off deep woods here. Like Jack and Lily need DEET, because it looks like there's fucking mosquitoes and bugs flying around in every single shot.
But they're not, though, right? It's like, it's not actual insects. It's like some sort of ephemera that they have floating around in the air, like dandelion wisps or cotton wisps. I don't know what it is, but you're right. There's just like a bunch of shit
flying around. One reviewer called it the dandruff of the gods, and I laughed out loud. I don't know. It's cool because it keeps everything moving, and it looks unlike any other film, but it's bizarre.
And it emphasizes the light, like it brings all this attention to the light, which I think that's like the main effort. And there are parts where it really, really works. Like when Mia Sara touches the unicorn and everything goes to shit, and then she's like and then the unicorn's getting kidnapped and all, like everything, that there's a lot of floating shit around there. That looks pretty amazing. But to go back to your point about it looking like a classic Hollywood studio lot, like towards the end of the film, when Jack, as played by Tom Cruise, like goes no and like swings across the thing, the divide, like it's like, wow, that really does, that feels like straight out of like Captain Courageous.
Errol Flynn shit right there,
right? And speaking of Tom Cruise, I have never been so acutely aware of how much plastic surgery the man has had until I watched this movie.
I was watching Maverick this morning, loved it.
So good.
But yeah, I mean, he looks beautiful in the film, and I'm watching it every single time he's on screen. I'm like, that's Tom Cruise, right? Like, it's just such a weird performance.
It looks like Tom Cruise's like ugly younger brother. That's what it looks like. It looks like you're not looking at like someone like Tom Cruise adjacent. It doesn't look like him. It's weird with the teeth, the nose. It's intense. You gotta go. You're on mute.
No, I'm good.
Are you baby watching at the moment?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay. Well, if you have to dip out, I will just vamp.
Vamp. I can hear you.
Okay. We'll just, all right. And I'm vamping because he has up and walked away, but that is the price of being a father. It is more important to rear your child than it is to do a podcast. And if you're rearing a child, my suggestion is that you don't show your child the film Legend from 1985, because you will traumatize that child. And he's back. Hello again.
Child trauma. Yeah, that was definitely a thing in the 80s. For sure.
Okay. Where else to go with this?
Let's talk about this score, because you're going to fire the great Jerry Goldsmith and hire Tangerine Dream here? Now, I listened to the original score that got nixed by Ridley Scott. Did you?
No, I did not. I love Tangerine Dream.
Sucked. It sucked. And I love Jerry Goldsmith, but like, yeah, they made the right call here because his original score was like dumb ambient noises and like trying to blend with like a traditional score. It just was not working. I love the score for from Tangerine Dream.
I love Tangerine Dream scores. This is one of my least favorite though. I think that like this one, he seems like he's doing a lot more. I forget his name from Tangerine Dream.
He's just one guy.
Yeah, it's really just one dude. But in this one, I feel like he is doing. I feel like he's been asked to like, hey, just be more ethereal, be more kind of background, like don't be too focused with like, because like a lot of it just kind of like feels filler. You know what I mean? It doesn't feel like there's like a lot of the Tangerine Dream stuff from the 80s to me is very memorable, and this to me didn't feel memorable.
Okay, all right. How about these these songs from like Brian Ferry coming in and Tangerine himself sings like the last song. Ooh.
Yeah, 80s music. I love it most of the time. This was not. I mean, but like 80s music written for an 80s movie isn't always going to be the best.
Yeah, it can get a little bit tricky. Yeah. Maybe we should dive into this story for what it is, because Jesus Christ, man, unless you're 9 or 10 years old, I'm sitting down with a pen and paper. These choices are bonkers. They're going to introduce a princess. There's no kingdom. There's nothing. Why do they even bother making her a princess? Can't she just be like beautiful, a girl who likes to wander around in the woods? Because the king and queen, they don't cut to them being like, we need to save our daughter. Hire that. Like no one even cares that she's missing. Like there's nothing.
That's a really good point. I feel like also, I mean, there's a lot of things in this movie that are taking place that are, seems like they're expecting people not to notice or care. Like for instance, what's her name again? Lily is running from the goblins, and she hides in her friend's house, who she basically got frozen. I don't know why no one else got frozen, but the poor woman got frozen. And she goes up and hides in the attic, and then the goblins come in looking for her supposedly, but really just laying out exposition and making sure that she knows that it's her fault.
Sure.
And then they turn around and leave. So there's a lot of things like that happening that just feel like it's convenient. I don't know. And then Darkness, man, like I guess it must have really sucked to put Tim Curry in all of that, because there's a lot of him showing up like off screen. There's like a whole dialogue that takes place where there's just like shots of his empty chair and his fireplace and shit. And then the other scene where he shows up, but he's like wrapped up in rags and shit for some reason. They don't really show his face. You just hear his voice. It's like, I guess no one wanted to sit in the chair today.
Like he's got to be in hiding. Like, why would it matter if he's in a disguise? Yeah, some bizarre choices. Like this first scene. All right, I can dig Jack and Lily running around in the woods frolicking. It's all, it's very fantasy, and I liked it. And the unicorns look cool. Like when they're like playing around, like I'm feeling the magic. I'm getting the feels. When the unicorn dies, I'm absolutely feeling it. Like I'm feeling really bad. In fact, I'm at the age now where I'm like, I don't know. I kind of feel like I need to see if the unicorn comes back, because I'm getting to this weird age where I can't handle it when like beautiful animals die in movies. It's very odd. But from there, like, what the fuck is going on? Like, Jack doesn't give her any warning about the unicorns, and like she tosses this ring into this river, and then like freaks out when he goes to get it when she told him that that's what he needs to do. Like, what are these choices?
I don't really understand what happens all there right there, despite me just going on about how simple the story is. I kind of get, I don't know, maybe distracted at that point. I don't know. I looked down and looked up. I'm like, oh, everything's winter now. Jack's underwater and he's frozen. So he dives in the water. Everything gets frozen. But I didn't understand. I didn't seek to understand. I didn't back it up to be like, oh, what did I miss here? I did later in the movie. I missed something later on in the movie too. Like and I did back it up. Like when Lily is at the table with Darkness, and Darkness goes charging down the table, like stalking towards her, which is so awesome. Fucking cool. It looks awesome. It feels awesome. And then she just kind of suddenly switches gears and like goes from screaming to laughing, and she's playing along. And I'm like, oh, did she drink the blood? Wait, no, she didn't. She's okay. So she's pretending. You figure out that she's playing along, but like, it's just so sudden. I'm like, did something?
Yeah.
So if she didn't drink, then she's faking it, which means that Darkness is a fucking idiot.
Exactly what I wrote. Like, this guy is not smart enough to know that she's fucking, like, I mean, it's for kids. And like, I could see this being in some Disney movie, but like, yeah, Darkness comes off like a fucking dumbass in this movie. Like, he's like literally like talking to his dad, trying to get some advice on how to like date this woman. Like, it's like a 5-minute long scene where he's like, what do I do? And then like his dad, who's probably like the actual devil, is like, you know, court her nice and like tell her nice things and feed her. He's like, all right, I'll do that when she comes here. What the fuck is this scene?
Yeah, and then like he decides to like turn her, and we get this beautiful shot of her like running through, like hell or wherever they're at. Which, by the way, if evil loves cold and everything becomes wintry when it's evil, why is hell so hot? Anyway, but like we get these great shots of her just kind of running, and that kind of again gets to my main point here, which is so much seems to be replaced with just beautiful imagery.
Yeah, it's so true.
Also, speaking of while we're on the subject of Darkness being a fucking idiot, if you have one weakness and it's sunlight, maybe don't shout out sunshine is my destroyer, just kind of apropos of nothing twice. Like making sure everybody knows, like,
if you want to kill me,
this is unwise.
Yeah, and that's the thing I kept doing. It's like, okay, you remember when you were 9 and 10, Eric, you loved this movie. You're a 42-year-old man with a pen and paper here, so go easy on it.
Yeah,
a lot of the time, like, in fact, one of my big notes is the fact that this movie would be so much better if no one said anything. Because like every time someone talks, it's fucking dumb. Like all the lines are stupid. Like, I don't know what else to say,
dude. A bigger problem with me is the ADR. Every single line, nothing was recorded on set.
Nothing.
Literally, no audio recorded on set. Is that what's going on here? Because everything is punched in.
The fans that were blowing that shit around were so loud that you could not hear any of the actors.
You're probably 100% right. The bubble makers drowned out the speed.
the glitter blaster was fucking noisy as shit.
Because I mean, everything is dubbed over. It's distracting. It's distracting.
Yeah, especially when like Lily goes to like her friend's house and she's like, "Oh dear, don't touch that biscuit." It's like, where the fuck did they record this? Yeah, it's bizarre. And I mean, I gotta say, this character Gump, like David Bennett plays, like,
oh man.
This was it. Like when I was a kid, this guy used to freak me out. This guy made me weird because I was like a kid. I'm like, is he a kid? Why does he sound like an adult? And I used to get scared of him. But like, I kind of dig this character. Like, I like that he's got like this weird voice. That's you don't see that in a lot of fantasy movies. They like either just sound like they're supposed to or not. It made for like an interesting elf that I dug. So yeah, I kind of like Gump.
And I liked that he doesn't seem like he's urging Jack to kill Lily at one point.
Yeah.
He's not just like, oh, everything's magic and rainbows and everything's fun. He's kind of dark in a way. But also speaking of dark, like it's hard not to see the movie. Like I've never seen The Tin Drum, but I know that David Bennett was in The Tin Drum, which is like an infamous movie. Like it was as an underage child, he engaged in things on film that should not be. Which is why I've never seen the movie. But so it's kind of like part of me is like, man, I hope that like it seemed like this should have if the movie had been bigger, Legend. I agree. I think he does really good work in this, and I think that I would have liked to have seen more of him because I think he's a good actor, from what I can tell.
You know, before I fell in love and gave my undying devotion to Ali Sheedy in The Breakfast Club,
for sure thought you were going to say your wife's name there, but okay.
No, Ali Sheedy. I remember having a huge crush on Tammy Stonak, the insane-looking Ula chick.
Really?
Yeah. I loved her when I was a kid. Like, it was her. It's between her and that child empress from Neverending Story. Both these weird fairy women. Okay, quite a thing in 1985 for these insane-looking fairies.
I certainly had a thing for the woman, the girl from Neverending Story. But you got Mia Sara right there.
Yeah, I'm good. Give me that crazy looking fairy that makes a lot of fucked up choices in this film.
Yeah, she's like a Tinkerbell that can grow big and is pissed off, which I like that. Yeah. I mean, again, like sticking to a lot of the myths of England, that the sprites are playful, mischievous creatures that are, that can be good or evil. The elves are more concerned about the land and themselves than anything else. I think that, I mean, it's kind of fun, the way that these myths are explored, although it's such a shotgun approach that you don't get to spend a lot of time with a lot of them. And some of them, I don't know. I mean, like the Goblins, for instance, they look great. They look like the psychosexual biker gang from Mandy.
Yeah, they really do.
I mean, they look awesome, and they seem so important in the first like third of the film, and then they just kind of like drop off. It seems like
they don't even get killed; they just leave.
They just leave. They just leave the fucking movie, and when they get down to the bottom, when all the when Screwball or whatever the fuck all their names are, when they get down there, they're fighting some unseen, some dude that looks like Blaster, from
Master Blaster.
Wait, not the Blaster part. He looks like Blaster.
Oh, Blaster. Oh, shit.
just Blaster from Thunderdome. And it's like, okay, well, where the fuck did this guy come from? Why aren't they fighting these other villains that they've set up earlier in the movie? It's just bizarre.
And that takes me back to this 89-minute runtime. Like when I sit back and I'm like, well, what happened? Like, what did they have to do? It seems like they spent like 10 minutes in the kitchen throwing pie pans around, and then like we were at the final boss. It doesn't seem like a big mission. So they should have extended it. Maybe I will take a look at the director's cut, because it's not much happens.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a slog to get through it. I don't know that I'm going to want to watch the director's cut myself. If you do watch it, let us know if it's worth revisiting, because to me, it's like there's so much of this that feels like movie making magic, and it takes me out of it repeatedly, that like that Tim Curry's not really in the movie again until an hour in. It's for such obvious reasons, that this the filmmaking cost or the time it took to put him in the chair or whatever. There's a lot of stuff happening where I'm just like, and then also PG. I mean, there's a moment in this movie where they dump over a barrel of shit in like a stew, and it's like human remains being stewed. There's like a spine and like a rib cage and shit, like that they were gonna eat. I'm like, man, the 80s were so fucking weird when it came to their rating system.
These pie pans that they're throwing to make the reflective saucers, they're literally human meat pies that the demons eat. Like they sit around eating human pies.
So I kind of I respect that to a degree.
Cool.
Yeah, it's dark. It's cool. I mean, 5-year-old me couldn't handle it at all, but it's it is what it is.
Well, I gotta say, man, Entertainment Weekly voted Darkness, as portrayed by Tim Curry, as the number one best performance in a bad movie.
Okay.
How do you feel?
I mean, like, where? That's his voice, right? I don't even hear Tim Curry.
Dude. I hear him a little bit when he's chatting with Lily. He's kind of got like that sassiness that he does as Dr. Frackenfurter. You can see it here and there.
Yeah, it's an incredible performance.
Oh my God, it's so good.
It's not just the makeup, although that's obviously a huge part of it, but like his voice, his facial tics, because you can see his face clearly despite everything, and it's just like it kind of makes me think of Michael Keaton as Beetlejuice in a way, in that it's like there is makeup there, but not so much that it should like make the character no longer look the actor no longer look recognizable. But what the actor is doing in conjunction with the makeup is so powerful that it's like creating a wholly new character.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, these choices again, like as a kid, like I remember like Jack like cutting his hand off or something, but like I don't remember him like going into like this black void. Like where is he even going? Like what happened to him? Like like what is that? I don't know. It just seems like a lot of like, well, who cares about that? As long as it looks cool, things by this director and screenwriter.
Yeah, and maybe you're right. Maybe the director's cut would fill in some of the things that we're a little bit confused on in this simple story that we're talking about, and maybe not. And even if that is the case, then it's like, then what are you doing? Why would you make it, put all this time and effort into a movie like this and then deliberately leave out some kind of explanatory things when you're going out of your way in other points in the movie to like beat us about the head with what's happening and explain to us what's happening.
We get this long crawl in the beginning that it's fun, but like
Star
everything,
Wars-ish.
everything in that crawl, the characters tell us about anyway.
Yeah.
Which makes that a little bit useless. And just like the dialogue wasn't there for me here. I think one of my favorite parts in the movie, I gotta say, was when that cool ass black dress was dancing around. That was fucking awesome.
Was that early CGI?
I don't know what the hell that was, but it still looks cool.
Rotoscoping? I don't know. There's definitely some pretty cool effects. If I have to say my favorite part of the movie, it was actually besides darkness, of course. Sure. It would be the very, very end, and I kind of referenced this already. Like when they're waving goodbye to all the goblins and stuff. It's kind of cheesy, but also I think it's good filmmaking, like storytelling. In a movie that's kind of lacking strong storytelling, it's clear that they're never going to see each other again, and that this is that moment. I'm like, oh, this is why it's a legend, because like now they're saying goodbye and they're not going to go back to the enchanted forest again, because they finally figured out that humans, just by touching things with their very presence, fuck things up.
I love that part. Like, I really like that. But did you know that I don't know if it's in the director's cut or not, but there's an alternate ending which gives a lot more complexity to these two like lifeless duds of leads, where they decide that like they're better off without each other and they don't really belong with each other, because one is a princess and the other is like Woods boy who does not belong with her.
I think they did good in cutting that out. And they tried to bring up this weird class element early in the movie where they're like, oh, you're poor, but you're richer than me because you have a cozy house. Since they did so little in establishing her wealth and her class and her status and all that stuff, it would have been weird. Although again, like Jack he's more than just poor. He is also part of that British mythology of like the wild man in the woods, like raised by wolves or whatever, like, kind of parallels werewolf myths, but or like in like 8-man myths, but just like dude in the woods myths.
I had to check the IMDb and figure out, because I'm sitting there, I'm watching this, I'm like, every time they show Jack, I'm like, why is that Tom Cruise? Is that Tom Cruise? Am I dreaming this? This is after Taps. This is after The Outsiders. After after All the Right Moves. After Risky Business.
Just after
he suited up as Jack and crouched around in his non-underwear laden legs. Like, why is he in this?
Yeah, I mean, he probably wanted to work with Ridley Scott.
I guess.
Right. He probably saw working with Ridley Scott as a big opportunity. He is a man that knows the power of a blockbuster, and he probably thought this was going to be one. That's my guess.
Okay. Did the film make money? Was it a hit?
I didn't check. Did you?
No, I forgot to look.
I mean, it's remembered well in that people know what movie you're talking about if you bring up Legend. But as far as it actually making any money, I'm not so sure. I mean, it looks like it just made barely. I mean, according to Wikipedia, its budget was $24.5 million. It made $23.5 million at the box office. So and that probably doesn't include advertising. So I would say it didn't quite make back its money.
It's also very kind of devoid of a lot of humor, because the goblins crack jokes, but they're not funny. Nobody else is funny. They rhyme.
Rhymes aren't
silly,
funny.
But like, everybody else is so dead serious, and like that's why you can't watch this and like Labyrinth and get like the same kind of fun vibe, because Labyrinth has a ton of humor and energy. Of course, Jim Henson.
Yeah.
It's a good point. With this, it's just like everything is just so serious and depressing. I don't know.
Yeah, it's awfully dark. All right, I feel like we've whipped this horse. I got nothing else beyond final thoughts. What do you think? Should we wrap up a little early?
There's only so much you can talk about how Rob Bottin needs to return, be covered in Oscars and awards and lifetime achievements, and brought back. When you check him out, the last thing he did was a little bit of work on Game of Thrones, and no one even knows where he is. Like, I heard he's like doing real estate now or something, which is which is it's unbelievable. But yeah, I mean,
he must have grown to hate the business or something. Because
I guess, that's why a lot of the reason Rick Baker left is because he was getting replaced by CG, which he openly came out and was like, it looks like shit. It looks like shit.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be surprised if our team was doing the same stuff, because they're all just getting replaced. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, if we're wrapping up, Travis, I got to tell you, man, like, it's for kids for sure, man. I mean, I bet you could show this to a kid today, 9-10-year-old kid, and it would be like, this is fucking awesome. These monsters are awesome. Like, I love what I'm seeing right now. But, for me, it's the makeup of darkness. It's some really cool looking images and a great sense of the fable and light versus dark, some cool music, and that is it. It's just me wanting a lot more and expecting a lot more from this filmmaker, this creative team. So man, Jason, we love you. And Jason told me that he still watches this all the time, and he loves the film and didn't even need to rewatch it because he still loves it. And I don't know, nostalgia does a lot of things for a lot of people, but for me, there's really no reason to return. It doesn't hold up, in my opinion.
Okay. I will echo, I think, a lot of that. I love Welichko. We miss you, buddy. Wish you could have made it on. We'll have you on another time. And I think it's important to note that this movie is for kids, despite it being, I think, inappropriate for little kids, say kids of 5 years old in Heartland, Michigan in 1985. Sure. But I do think that, it's not necessarily geared towards adults, but I think at the same time, I think it's expecting adults to get something out of it with its references to religious and like kind of cryptid mythology. The stars of this movie are Rob Bottin, the makeup designer, and Tim Curry. These are the real stars, as you pointed out. I respect the fact that this is a cult classic, and chances are, if I had watched this movie over and over again as a kid, like Welichko did, that I would grow up today and I would be on this podcast today gushing about it. But I didn't. I don't have that nostalgia factor, so I'm judging it solely on its, on its appearances, on what's being presented before me, and I found this to be just a beautiful misfire. Just a beautiful bore. Part of the reason I didn't know what happened when I looked down was because I kept on having to force myself to put my phone down and shit. Like, okay, no, focus. This is not that bad. You can get through this.
Damn,
one of my last notes. 90 minutes. One of my last notes to myself was good wins. Who cares? So I think that kind of sums up how I felt about it.
Yeah.
I feel bad because I know people listening to this probably or some people listening to this are like fans of the movie. They're like, oh great, I just listened to an hour of these people shitting all over my favorite movie. I always hate it when that happens, but I can't lie, I did not enjoy this at all. I don't believe it held up.
I mean, don't get us wrong, we like all the things that you mostly like about it, and come on, mostly everyone talks about darkness and how cool the world looks, and it does look cool, but I'm telling you, man, the older I get and the more movies I critique on this program, which is a lot of fun, I just see these choices that I don't know how they got away with.
I'll say this. I mean, I may watch this again in my life by putting it on and like while I'm having a party or something, because like just having, or like maybe throwing this on really late at night when I've had a few beers or something. Like, I mean, visually speaking, it'd be nice to have in the background as far as art. That one critic said it was like a classic painting come to life, and in some ways it kind of is, or maybe a Bosch painting, but still it is beautiful. I'll give it that.
Cool. That's all we can do for now.
Yeah. So
let's talk about next week, man. You are returning as our selection master, and I'm interested in what direction you're heading in here.
So there is a film that we've discussed a few times of late. It just keeps on popping up on the show. it didn't come, and I feel like when it does, sometimes when that happens, it makes me want to choose it as a movie, and sometimes I'll do that, and sometimes I won't. And this time I'm choosing it, a movie that's come up recently. It didn't come up this episode, although its director did, Louis Malle. I'm taking us to 1981. I want to talk My Dinner with Andre.
Okay. There it is.
We talked about the last 2 episodes. It kind of came up, and I thought, well, that'd be fun. Let's talk about people talking.
We're going to talk about people talking. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Next viewing. It's on HBO Max, I believe, at the moment. So if you haven't seen it, do check it out. It is a classic film with Wallace Shawn and that other guy.
The guy that I guess is Andre.
Andre. Yeah, with Andre. All right.
Dinner with Andre.
Short episode, but we are missing 2 hosts, really. So there we are. So thank you for joining us. And we again send out love to Mike Govier and Jason Welichko and all of you fine people. We will be seeing you probably next Thursday. Should be our usual, go back to our usual schedule, presumably.
Who knows? Thanks for listening. Appreciate you. Catch you next time.
Insert darkness quote.
Right.
I don't have one.